Okay, welcome to another episode of Tech Tickle. I'm checking in with you today to bring you build vlog number 4. This build isn't necessarily the best that I've ever put together, but I've decided to put this build in a video for one very specific reason. A special twist I'm gonna save till the end. I promised you all that I would start recording these in the future in terms of the actual building process and do a time-lapse video with some techno music laid over it like the rest of the fucking idiots on YouTube like to do. But I didn't get around to it for this particular one, but I promise you for the next, I will put together some sort of filming methodology and make it a reality. But for now, you're just gonna have to do with the usual and listen to me fucking talk about it. So, roll the intro! All right, this build is kind of special because it sort of stands as a good enough to do but not the best I could have done kind of build, sort of like Amy Schumer. Anyway, let's move into the part list and you'll see what I mean. So, Gigabyte P55A-UD3 motherboard with an Intel i5-750. I paid $120 for the pair of these, which is a little on the high side. But again, this is more of an accurate representation of what you, the consumer, could do in your average couple of weeks looking on Kijiji. It's not the best deal I've ever gotten, not even close, but it'll do you just fine. $120 is still a very good start for CPU motherboard. RAM, I've got $28 for an 8GB kit here. It's a 4-stick × 2 Samsung DDR3 1333 set that was pulled out of Prebuilts that I tore down, I'm pretty sure. Do you just fine and should allow for overclocking up to 3.5 gigahertz on this CPU. If you know anything about first generation overclocking, you know that the RAM and the CPU have a very close relationship. I threw an SSD in this build. We have a Crucial C400, which is the OEM version of the M4, 128 gigabytes. It is part of the stack that I bought a while ago, and this one, of course, breaks down to $25. SSDs, strictly speaking, will add cost to a build and will not add performance in gaming, so the FPS per dollar is going to increase as a result. But again, this makes it a more appealing build, a better overall build, and that's what it's all about, especially if you're in the market to resell like I am. Moving on, we have the Antec Basic 450 watt power supply that I paid regrettingly $30 for. It's not the best deal I've ever gotten on a 450 watt power supply, especially of this build quality. It's still fine, it's just obviously it's not top tier Antec, but it will do the job. It has a single native 6-pin PCIe connector, which is exactly what I need. On the CPU, I slapped another one of those Arctic Freezer 13s, this time the CO version that I bought for $35 a while back for a personal build. Again, just decided to repurpose it, and I'm tacking the cost on because, like I said, you might be in the position where you have to buy a retail cooler for yourself. And it's not an unreasonable expense when you consider the total price that I paid for this build. The case, Silverstone LC10 of some variety. I cannot pinpoint which revision of it is, but it has USB 2 ports on the front, so it's obviously not the LC10-E. But anyway, it's a flat-lying, full-size ATX HTPC case, and it makes the graphics card choice that I made particularly poignant. And that graphics card is the NVIDIA GTX 660 OEM. Now, the reason why I said this build would be interesting and would come with a bit of a twist is because it's kind of going to serve as a review of the 660 OEM in conjunction with the build log as a whole. Now, why is that interesting? It's an old card. It should be of no relevance to you, but of course I'm all about educating. I want you people to learn something when you're watching my videos, and the 660 OEM is actually different from the retail 660 that many of you may possess. The retail 660, and I'll put the specs up now, had 960 CUDA cores, 80 texture units, 24 ROPS, was built on the same 28 nanometer Kepler bullshit, and had a core clock of 980 and a boost of 1072. The GTX 660 OEM is different in that it had more CUDA cores, more texture units, but a slower base clock to sort of put it in line with the retail 660. So it was sort of a faux 660. And it was only found in pre-builds, which is why it's particularly rare and you're not going to find a lot of people with it. Now, what makes this card interesting is that this silicon, with its 1152 CUDA cores, its 96 texture units, and so on, is that it's a base clock of 824 and boost clock of 899 and the memory clock of 1400 leave a lot of room for overclocking, even though this card only has one 6-pin connector available and already carries a 140 watt TDP. You will be stunned at the kind of performance I can get out of this thing. As you know from a previous video, if you saw it, I ended up paying $75 for that card, and that brings the total build price for this build vlog number 4 to 329 Canadian dollars. If you tack on 40 bucks for OEM Windows 10, it would come to 369. But we're not going to do that. The reason we're not going to do that, and this is one thing I always tell you to check when buying a motherboard. This one came with Windows 7 Pro already tethered to it. So when I got it home, I loaded it up. I asked the seller what operating system he was using, whether or not it was genuine. I installed that version. It activated, it updated, and now it has Windows 10 Pro sitting on it, ready to go, fully activated, and it cost me $0. So that's $40 we're going to be able to save here without pirating, which is great. Let's cut to the benchmarks, put this fucker to the test, and I'll be back to discuss it with you further. All right, so first up, I'm going to throw the benchmarks right up on the screen because there's no point in me walking you through them one at a time. You know the games, you've seen the numbers. I'll add some comparables to give you some frame of reference from the most recent builds I did in the same performance class. Now, for those of you not in the know, what's really special about this silicon is that it was released later as the GTX 760, just upclocked considerably with the same core voltage, which led me to think that maybe, just maybe, the GTX 660 OEM would be a beast of an overclocker, and lo and behold, it was. I was able to get this motherfucker all the way up to a 944 core clock, which is 120 megahertz higher than the advertised core clock. And the boost clock ended up plateauing at an astounding 1058. Now keep in mind, to achieve these results, I didn't have to apply a single millivolt of voltage to the core more. I left it at stock. It was butter smooth, without a hitch, no artifacting, no problems. Easy peasy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That is precisely why you don't buy a GTX 760. If you want something that performs just as well, see if you can find one of these motherfuckers for dirt cheap. But anyway, this gives us a price-performance ratio of $6.24 per FPS we achieved on average during our benchmark suite, which is not nearly the best that I've done to date and not nearly the best that I've recorded so far. But still serves as a very good example of what the average person can do on your average week. Made a perfectly usable 1080p gaming machine that will fit conveniently thanks to the form factor underneath your TV. Still costs less than $400 Canadian, which makes an Xbox or a fucking PlayStation go suck it. And will do the average user just fine and deliver an enjoyable and entertaining gaming performance for the foreseeable future. Also, I hope you enjoyed my overview of the OEM 660, and I hope you keep an eye out for cards of a similar nature in your area. Do some research. The Wikipedia page will serve as a great tool for learning about the cards in between, the tweener cards, let's say, the OEM cards, the limited release cards, the 3 gigabyte version of the 580, for example, or other oddities like the 760 X2s that were floating around on those custom dual GPUs. All these little tiny quirky cards that weren't necessarily released to market, weren't heavily reviewed, can be great buys because not a lot of people know about them. And if you happen to find one, you might be in for a pretty favorable lip-licking deal. Anyway, as for what I've got coming up in the future, another build vlog is right around the corner. I think I got some more of my favorite little micro ATX case right back there. See those two boxes back there? Yeah, that's Xeon X310. Paid $29 a piece for them this time. A little bit pricier than usual, but they'll do the job. And I've got an H81 motherboard with an i5-4460 ready to go. Just need to decide what sort of graphics card I'm going to throw in with it, given the space constraints and airflow restriction in that case. So stay tuned and you'll see what I decide. Follow me on Twitter, Reddit, the whole deal. Thanks for the support so far, guys. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers, which is pretty nuts for a channel that's not even a month old. So hopefully it begins to perpetually spread on its own. I only want to help. I'm only trying to help. I'm not doing this to make it my job. I'm not trying to be the next Jay's Two Nuts or whatever. I just want to give people advice and show you things from a perspective that you may not have considered before. So that's it for this time. I'll see you again next time. And until then, stay tickled.